afternoon, everyone. So we have a very special topic on which we can hear right from the horse's mouth that what we are looking forward to with regards to self-reliant India or Atmanirbhar Bharat in the field of defense. We have the three major stakeholders today with us, and we can get enlightenment with regards to what they intend to have, how they intend to offer, and what are the challenges in bridging this gap. So as the first stakeholder, I have Lieutenant General Vineet Gaur, who is on the ground zero to talk about what is required, how much is required, of what standards it's required, and who can deliver it. And for this, I have a specific question for him, which I would like him to address. That in the military domain, we actually talk about global standards, which are essentially Western concepts. Whether it is tech, whether it is capability from the equipments, or whether it is about the warfare tools, or whether it is transparency in decision making, everything is being talked about from the Western concept of global standards. Now, in the face of our threat with our adversaries like China, who selectively follow global standards, can India really look forward for global standards and then develop their own necessities as per the requirements? Sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, my gratitude to Professor and Dr. Maitre and the entire IIM Nagpur fraternity to, first of all, invite defense leadership as part of the global thought on leadership and this Zero Mile Samvad. So that's, first of all, is a very, heartening to start with, that you've included the defense leadership to talk about defense manufacturing as one of the subjects to talk about. Now, there is a lot of ground which we need to cover as far as self-reliance is concerned, and you are primarily talking about how do we become self-reliant? Do we take global standards? Do we not? So first, the self-reliance in defense is an extremely, extremely important topic. We've been working on it for many, many years. So I will cover first self-reliance in defense. And I'll cover it in three parts. And I'll start where we were, where we are, and where are we likely to go. And in that journey, I will cover about the standards. So let's start where we were. When we started, we had just about 12 ordnance factories when the Britishers left us. Very rudimentary industry, nothing much being produced. Whatever was being produced was what the Britishers wanted us to produce. And India became independent. We had just 12 ordnance factories. No indigenous technology. Because the technology of the West was, and particularly the Britishers were taking material from us, the raw material from us, producing it in their own country and bringing it back and selling it to the world. So with those 12 ordnance factories, we had nowhere to go as far as self-reliance and defense is concerned. And in 1956, a very important thing came, which called the Industrial Policy Resolution, wherein at that time, maybe it was the right thing to do, that the defense manufacturing of arms and ammunition were reserved for the public sector. And the private sector was deliberately kept out of it. From 56, in 1958, we had the DRDO, which came with around 10 odd laboratories. So see how it is building up. Today, DRDO is with 53 labs. The ordnance factories are 41 of them, now, of course, changed into, corporatized into DPSUs. The entire setup remained largely public, and therefore, the private sector could never contribute to the growth. For nearly 5 decades, the Indian defense industry was only limited to some sparks of brilliance which came from DRDO, which primarily started with the missile development, where we had the Prithvi, Akash, Nag, Trishul, which we had LCA, we had Arjun. We slowly graduated to making some weapon systems. While we were making these weapon systems, the primary or the core technology always came from the countries which actually used to own those technologies, where they have been working for years together to produce that technology. We never got that technology. All we got was the integration capability of some of these technologies into a platform. And therefore, the private sector never got any sort of thing. And defense is a very peculiar market, where you find the only buyer for a defense market or for the defense equipment is your own government. And if you do not have an assured order from that single market or the single buyer that you have, it is very difficult for any private industry to invest unless you start become globally competitive and you start. So the global standards come there. The moment you start becoming globally competitive, you have to follow global standards. And therefore, when you look at private sector, it will invest in the country today for not only your own requirement, but will also do some sort of exports. And that's precisely what is happening. In 2020, the Honorable Prime Minister gave 2 targets to the Indian defense industry. The first target was that by 2025, you will have 1,70,000 crores of annual production. And by 2025, you will have 40,000 crores of exports. Where have we reached so far? The last financial year, we had 1,07,000 crores in defense production, and we had 16,000 crores in the exports. And ironically, while 70% orders for the Indian government for our own requirement went to the public sector, and only 30% went to the private, but when it came to exports, it was the 70% of the exports of the 16,000 went from the private sector and only 30% went from the public sector, which means that the private sector has the necessary wherewithal to be globally competitive. It will only be globally competitive if it follows the global standards. Therefore, it is not possible for us to go the way Chinese or any other such country is going, which produces certain things, hiding certain standards because it doesn't want those standards to proliferate to global standards, or it does not want to use those global standards for producing something. So, thank you.